Hey guys, Dr. Blackman here. We are going to go over some of these structures in the endocrine system. Okay, if you remember, the endocrine system makes hormones that travel through the bloodstream generally to have effects on certain parts of the body. So think of hormones as in insulin, testosterone, estrogen, etc. Right? So some of these endocrine organs include the hypothalamus, which is here, right? That's actually part of the nervous system, right? Part of the brain. So your hypothalamus would be here, right? It's connected by the stalk or infundibulum, right, to your pituitary gland. And your pituitary gland is divided up into an anterior portion and a posterior portion. So some folks will just say anterior pituitary gland and posterior pituitary gland, or anterior lobe and posterior lobe of the pituitary gland, okay? Because they are made of different structures and produce and store different hormones, that's why we kind of make the distinction. The other name for the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland is the adenohypophysis. The other name for the posterior lobe would be the neurohypophysis. Okay? Hypophysis, by the way, is just a fancy way of saying pituitary. Okay? This structure here, you're basically looking at the throat here, right, in the neck. This is the thyroid gland. Okay? Not to be confused with the thymus. Right? Thyroid gland produces T3 and T4, which are your, quote, thyroid hormones. It also produces calcitonin. Okay. Here's your kidney, which, believe it or not, is also part of the endocrine system because it releases a hormone called erythropoietin, which increases the number of red blood cells that you have. The structure that rests atop the kidney is called the adrenal gland. Okay? Kidney, renal, probably heard that before. Renal refers to kidney, so that's why this is called the adrenal gland. Adrenal gland produces a lot of hormones: aldosterone, cortisol. You've probably heard of adrenaline, right? That comes from the adrenal gland. The other name for adrenaline is epinephrine. Okay. This is showing a testicle or a testis. That is part of the reproductive system and endocrine system because it produces testosterone and other androgens or male sex hormones. Okay? This is part of the female reproductive system. Here's an ovary, right? And you see these different follicles of various stages of maturity that have the oocytes or eggs in them. Okay? The ovary, like the testicle, is also an endocrine structure because it produces estrogen and progesterone. Okay, and just to kind of orient you here, this is the fallopian tube, there's the uterus, there's the cervix, which leads to the vagina or the birth canal. Okay. This structure here, you're basically looking at the throat but from a posterior position, okay? Going back up here, this is the anterior portion of the throat, right? So we already said that's the thyroid gland, okay? So if you flip that over, if you go down here and just flip that over, and now you're looking posteriorly, okay? That's still the thyroid gland there, okay? But these four nodules, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 nodules, those are the parathyroid glands, okay? And they produce a hormone called parathyroid hormone, which plays a role in regulating how much calcium you have in your bloodstream. And finally, on this board, we have the pancreas. We already studied it because it's part of the digestive system, but it's also part of the endocrine system because it releases 2 hormones that regulate your blood glucose levels, those 2 things being insulin and glucagon. Okay? I wanted to show you a couple other endocrine structures that are best seen on other models. Okay, this sagittal model of the head here shows us a couple things. Okay, this structure here, which we saw on our big board that we just covered, this portion here of your brain is the hypothalamus. Okay, so it's part of the nervous system and the endocrine system. It essentially tells the pituitary gland, which is here, it says number 16 there, that's the pituitary gland. So the hypothalamus essentially sort of tells the pituitary gland what to do and when to do it. Okay, so hypothalamus here, right? Pituitary gland here, which is connected by that little stalk. Lots of hormones come from the pituitary gland. Okay. The last structure that I want you to be familiar with here, this very, very small structure right there that sort of goes off of the posterior portion here, that's the pineal gland. I've also heard that pronounced pineal gland by people who presumably know what they're talking about. Okay. The pineal or pineal gland secretes a hormone called melatonin that sort of regulates your sleep-wake cycles. Okay, so again, hypothalamus here, pituitary gland here, and pineal gland here. Okay, by the way, you may remember this from ANP1, right? This is called the diencephalon. This portion of the brain here is the diencephalon. Okay, and very quickly, a couple other structures that are part of the endocrine system that you can see very well on this torso model. The thyroid gland here in the neck, right, is an endocrine organ. The thymus that we've talked about extensively, it would be here if it were present, right? It atrophies after puberty, so it's often not present in patients of a certain age. The thymus is part of the lymphatic system, but also part of the endocrine system because it produces hormones as well. Okay. If we come down here, this is the pancreas, which we already talked about extensively. Okay. We remove those belly organs. That's the technical term, belly organ. And spleen is here, which we've already talked about, not part of the endocrine system. Kidney, and you have two kidneys, kidney. On top of the kidney, adrenal gland. Okay? That adrenal gland is going to be divided up into a cortex and a medulla that are structurally and functionally different. We'll come back to that in a different video. Okay? Good luck, guys. Keep working hard.